Earth had been living in the shadow of an approaching storm for years. Rumors had swirled of an alien species known as the Orcarians, an empire that had ravaged countless worlds in its path. Their technology was far beyond anything humanity had seen, blazing through the stars with devastating firepower, and their warships were sleek, towering behemoths of destruction. Earth, still recovering from its own internal conflicts, was ill-prepared for the invasion that seemed inevitable. But then, out of nowhere, came an offer. The Orcarians, with their cold, calculating logic, sought to cut a deal with Earth's leaders. It wasn't an invasion, at least not yet. Instead, they offered to sell Earth a fleet of their outdated warships. These ships were considered relics that had long since been replaced by newer, more powerful designs. The humans, desperate and unable to resist the allure of the offer, agreed. The deal wasn't without its skepticism. Earth's government officials could hardly believe what they were hearing. Why would an empire as advanced as the Orcarians want to part with such valuable assets? The truth was simpler than they imagined. The Orcarians no longer had use for them. The warships were old, rusting, and near the end of their operational life. Their weapon systems were outdated, their engines barely functional. To the Orcarians, these ships were nothing more than space junk. To humanity, they represented an opportunity to level the playing field in the upcoming war that would soon engulf their world. The fleet of ships arrived in a flurry of cold, metallic shapes, their hulls weathered by time. The sight of them was humbling, yet strange. Earth's leaders stood at the edge of their spaceports, gazing at the vessels with a mix of wonder and disbelief. Some ships were barely recognizable as warships at all, their designs rough and patched together. The once gleaming Orcarian insignias were faded, almost illegible, but it didn't matter to the humans. They had what they needed, the foundation to fight back. Captain Jane Hawk, one of the few military officers who had studied the Orcarian fleet in depth, was one of the first to step aboard the ships. She had seen the strategic reports, the analyses of the Orcarian designs, and the way their ships were engineered. The initial impression was underwhelming. The warships felt sluggish. Their weapons, though formidable in their prime, had not aged well. The systems were outdated, and the crew quarters were cramped and uncomfortable. But Captain Hawk saw potential in the ships, potential that no one else seemed to notice. She rallied her team of engineers and officers, who had been working day and night to retrofit these old vessels with whatever Earth's technology could provide. They worked in the shadows of the rusted warships, replacing broken engines, strengthening their shields, and most importantly, reprogramming their weapon systems. Meanwhile, Earth's military leaders, not yet fully aware of the ship's potential, began to lose confidence. The Orcarians had made it clear that these ships were nothing more than outdated, scrap-worthy vessels. They had no idea that the humans, though outgunned, were about to turn these rusting relics into something far more dangerous than the Orcarians could ever imagine. In a dimly lit command room, Captain Hawk stood before the modified warship's controls. She watched as her engineers made final adjustments, their hands moving quickly over the new systems. The ship hummed to life with a low, metallic growl, far different from its old, sluggish startup. A smile tugged at Hawk's lips. It was working. Earth's greatest weapon, the will to adapt, to survive, to innovate, was beginning to take form. And somewhere in the galaxy, the Orcarian commanders, oblivious to the growing threat, believed they had already won. They didn't know that these rusted warships were about to become the spark of humanity's greatest triumph. The invasion came sooner than anyone had expected. The Orcarians, confident in their supremacy, arrived at Earth's doorstep in overwhelming force. Their fleet loomed over the planet like a storm cloud, casting long shadows over the horizon. Humanity had prepared as best they could, but no one truly believed they could stand against such a formidable enemy. Earth's military forces were stretched thin, relying on makeshift defenses that were no match for the Orcarians' advanced weaponry. It felt as if the world was about to be swallowed whole by the alien might. But the rusted warships were different. They had been hidden in the farthest corners of Earth's military bases, their modifications still fresh, their power untested. Captain Jane Hawk and her crew stood ready at the helm of one of the refurbished warships, watching the Urkarian fleet approach. Her heart raced, not with fear, but with determination. If Earth was to survive, it was up to them to make a stand. The first wave of Urkarian forces descended onto Earth's largest city with a ferocity that could not be measured. Their sleek warships fired upon the surface, reducing entire blocks to rubble in mere moments. Ground forces scrambled in vain to defend their cities, with no hope of halting the Urkarian advance. The humans watched in horror as their defenses crumbled, and panic set in. But then, amidst the chaos, the rusted warships began to move. The heavy engines roared to life, their thrusters cutting through the atmosphere, shaking off years of neglect. Captain Hawk gave the order, and the warships lifted off from their hidden hangars, disappearing into the sky like the ancient relics they were. The first human response was not one of desperation, but of defiance. As the fleet of rusted warships emerged from the clouds, the Urkarians, caught off guard by the sudden appearance of resistance, turned their attention to the skies. At first, they scoffed at the sight. These ships were no match for their own technology. But the Urkarians soon discovered that the humans had a very different way of fighting. These weren't just outdated warships. The humans had turned them into unpredictable machines of war. With each engagement, the rusted ships proved their worth. The Urkarian fleet expected the humans to fight conventionally, to try to outgun them. But the rusted warships didn't follow the rules. Their design, once thought flawed, allowed them to move in erratic, unanticipated patterns, slipping through the Urkarians' radar and avoiding their initial blasts. Captain Hawk's tactics were unconventional. She used the warship's heavy armor and slow maneuverability to her advantage, forcing the Urkarians to waste precious ammunition trying to hit targets that were always just out of reach. In one of the first major confrontations, a group of 3 rusted warships led a daring strike on one of the smaller Urkarian cruisers. The Urkarians, confident in their advanced weapons, didn't expect the humans to come at them head-on. But instead of retreating, the rusted ships closed the distance, launching a barrage of modified missiles, repurposed from Urkarian tech. The Urkarians tried to retaliate, but the Earth ships had already breached their defenses. The cruiser, overwhelmed by the sudden attack, exploded in a brilliant flash of light. It was the first major victory. The Urkarians had underestimated humanity's ability to turn the tide, even with the odds stacked against them. The rusted warships, once dismissed as obsolete, had proven their value. They had disrupted the Urkarians' plans, buying Earth precious time to regroup. The Urkarian commanders, who had expected a quick and easy conquest, were now forced to reconsider their strategy. But the victory was short-lived. The Urkarian response came swiftly. The next wave of ships was more powerful, more prepared for the unpredictable nature of the rusted warships. They weren't going to make the same mistake twice. As the Urkarian fleet regrouped, Captain Hawk knew the battle was far from over. The rusted ships had won the first battle, but the war was just beginning. However, with the first victory came something far more valuable: hope. Earth had shown the Urkarians that they were not an easy target. They weren't going to be swept aside like all the other conquered worlds. Humanity was ready to fight, and they had just begun. The Urkarians, still reeling from their unexpected losses, were quick to regroup. Their pride had been wounded, and now they were determined to crush this human resistance once and for all. A new fleet of warships arrived, this time with the most elite soldiers in the Urkarian military, soldiers known as the Drekthar. These were genetically engineered warriors, the pinnacle of Urkarian combat design, bred for sheer strength and deadly precision. They were the best of the best, and they had been sent to Earth to finish what their predecessors had started. Captain Jane Hawk watched the new fleet on the monitor, the red dots marking their advance across the stars toward Earth. She knew the stakes had just been raised. The Urkarians would not hold back now. Their elite forces, equipped with the latest in Urkarian weaponry and battle tactics, would stop at nothing to erase humanity from the galaxy. But the humans weren't intimidated. Instead, they were more determined than ever. The rusted warships, now fully integrated with Earth's technology, had proven their worth in the first wave of battle. They had survived the Urkarian onslaught, using their unpredictable movements and clever tactics to strike from unexpected angles. Earth's engineers had worked tirelessly to upgrade the warships, and Captain Hawk had made sure that every crew member was trained to utilize their ship's unique abilities to the fullest. The first confrontation between the rusted warships and the Drekthar forces was a brutal one. The Urkarians, with their superior firepower, attacked in a coordinated assault, raining down destruction on Earth's defenses. The humans, however, didn't fight the way the Urkarians expected. Captain Hawk and her officers used the terrain, the atmosphere, and the very unpredictability of the rusted warships to their advantage. As the Urkarians launched a full-scale bombardment of Earth's eastern coast, a group of rusted warships slipped into the atmosphere undetected, using the planet's dense cloud cover to obscure their movements. They weren't going to engage in a direct assault. Instead, they would attack the Urkarian forces where they were weakest, at their supply lines. The Urkarian fleet had become overconfident, and they underestimated the tenacity of humanity. As the rusted ships moved through the clouds, the Urkarian sensors failed to track them. Captain Hawk gave the signal, and the ships launched a series of rapid strikes on the enemy's supply depots, taking out key assets and communication hubs. The Urkarians were caught off guard, scrambling to respond to the unexpected threat. They had expected to crush the humans outright, but now their operations were being sabotaged by an enemy they had fought beneath them. In the chaos, the humans had gained the upper hand. The Drekthar forces, although powerful, were not equipped to handle such unconventional tactics. They were used to fighting against organized, predictable enemies, but humanity was anything but predictable. The humans adapted, learning from every skirmish and becoming more effective with each passing hour. The Urkarians began to lose their grip on the situation as the rusted ships struck from the shadows, disorienting their once unbeatable forces. By the time the Urkarians had managed to regroup and counterattack, the humans had already vanished back into the clouds, leaving only the aftermath of their strikes. The Urkarian fleet, now suffering from lack of supplies and fractured communication, was left questioning their initial assumptions. What had they underestimated about humanity? Why were the rusted ships able to outmaneuver their forces with such ease? In the midst of this confusion, Earth's forces celebrated their small victories, but Captain Hawk knew that this was only the beginning. The Urkarians would not relent so easily. The Drekthar were fierce, relentless, and they would return with more advanced strategies. But Earth had proven something crucial. They had shown that even the most advanced empire could be brought to its knees with the right combination of intelligence, resilience, and adaptability. The Urkarians had learned a hard lesson that day. Humanity was not a species to be dismissed. As the humans prepared for the next battle, they knew the path ahead would be difficult. The Urkarians would be back with vengeance in their eyes, but Earth had already set the stage for something larger. The rusted warships had given humanity a foothold, a chance to strike back in a way that no one had anticipated, and the Urkarians would soon realize that they had not just been fighting an enemy. They had been fighting a species that refused to be broken. The humans were not done. Not by a long shot. The success of the recent skirmishes had given Earth's forces a taste of victory, but Captain Jane Hawk knew that they couldn't afford to get complacent. The Urkarians were regrouping, and their next move would likely be their most lethal yet. Hawk and her team of engineers worked tirelessly to improve the rusted warships, pushing the limits of what they could achieve with the alien technology they had salvaged. Every modification was crucial, every upgrade an opportunity to gain the upper hand. Earth's engineers had been able to reverse engineer several pieces of Urkarian technology, including their advanced weaponry and shield systems. What had once been thought of as scrap had now become the foundation for a formidable counterattack. The biggest breakthrough came when Earth scientists discovered a crucial flaw in the Orcarian fleet's design, a flaw that no one had noticed before. The Orcarian warships relied heavily on a central artificial intelligence network that coordinated their movements, weapons, and defense systems. This AI was the heart of their operations, linking all their ships and ensuring that they functioned as a unified force. However, Earth's engineers discovered that the AI was vulnerable to hacking. The network was sophisticated, but it wasn't flawless. A single breach could send the entire fleet into disarray. With this knowledge in hand, Hawk knew the next step was clear: disable the AI, and the Orcarian fleet would be crippled. The humans had already shown that they could fight the Orcarians with unconventional tactics, but this was different. This was a chance to strike at the heart of their enemy's power. The plan was risky. To infiltrate the Orcarian network, they would need to get close. Too close to the Orcarian fleet for comfort. But the rusted warships, with their low profile and unpredictable movements, were perfectly suited for the task. Captain Hawk assembled a team of the best hackers and engineers, preparing them for the most dangerous mission humanity had ever attempted. The operation began under the cover of darkness, as the rusted warships slipped into Orcarian space, using their cloaking systems to avoid detection. The fleet moved in silence, their engines humming faintly as they approached the Orcarian command ship, a massive behemoth that was the central hub of the entire fleet's AI network. The humans were able to infiltrate the ship's defenses slowly, methodically. They had no room for error. A single mistake would mean the end of their mission, and possibly their lives. The closer they got, the more the tension grew. Earth's fleet moved like ghosts, their ships passing through the Orcarian patrols undetected. The command ship was now within reach, its massive structure looming before them. Captain Hawk gave the order to deploy their specialists, who were prepared to hack into the AI core. They used a series of sophisticated tools, designed by Earth's top engineers, to infiltrate the ship's internal systems. For hours, the team worked in silence, the only sound being the tapping of fingers on keyboards. The Orcarian AI was sophisticated, but Earth's engineers were resourceful, using their knowledge of the Orcarian network to bypass its defenses. The hacking was slow, delicate work, and every second brought them closer to being discovered. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the team succeeded. They had broken into the Orcarian AI network, sending a pulse through the system that disabled it entirely. The result was immediate. The once unified Orcarian fleet was thrown into chaos. Ships that had been operating under precise coordination were now drifting aimlessly. Their weapon systems went offline. Their communication was severed. The Orcarian command ship was effectively paralyzed. The humans, with their rusted warships, attacked immediately, taking advantage of the Orcarians' disarray. Without their central eye to guide them, the Orcarian ships were like sitting ducks, vulnerable to attacks from all sides. Earth's fleet launched a series of precise strikes, taking out key ships and destabilizing the remaining fleet. The battle was one of the most brutal the Orcarians had ever faced. Despite the chaos, the Orcarians quickly realized what had happened. They had underestimated humanity once again. They had relied on their technology to keep them invulnerable, but they had failed to account for human ingenuity. With their AI network disabled, the Orcarian forces were unable to regroup. Earth's rusted warships, enhanced with alien tech and human creativity, had struck the decisive blow. The victory was significant, but Captain Hawk knew it was only a temporary triumph. The Orcarians would adapt. They always did. But for now, humanity had made its mark. Rusted warships, once considered obsolete, had proven their value once again. They had become a symbol of humanity's resilience, of its ability to turn the impossible into the possible. As Earth's fleet prepared for the next phase of the war, they understood one crucial thing. The Orcarians had underestimated them, and now they would pay the price. The humans had broken the mold, and in doing so, they had rewritten the rules of warfare. The Urkarian Empire would never see them the same way again. The Urkarians had never anticipated a setback like this. For centuries, they had been the dominant power in the galaxy, their technology unmatched and their might uncontested. Yet, Earth had managed to break their central command network, causing chaos within their fleet. The Urkarian leadership was furious, and their thirst for vengeance burned hotter than ever. After the crippling blow to their AI system, the Urkarians were forced to rebuild their strategy. No longer could they rely on their advanced artificial intelligence to coordinate their forces. Instead, they turned to their most dangerous weapon, their elite warlords. These warriors were unmatched in combat, their skill honed through years of training and battle experience. The warlords would now lead the Urkarian forces, each one commanding a fleet of warships and wielding a terrifying array of weaponry. In response, Captain Jane Hawk and her crew knew that their victories thus far had only been the beginning. The rusted warships had proven to be more than just a nuisance to the Urkarians. They had become a symbol of defiance. Humanity had shown its potential. And now, more than ever, Earth had to prove it could stand its ground against an empire that would stop at nothing to destroy them. As the Urkarian warlords began to rally their forces, Hawk called for a meeting with Earth's high command. The room was tense, filled with the sharp hum of anticipation. Everyone knew that the next few days would determine the fate of their world. Their success had come from unpredictability, from fighting in ways the Urkarians had not expected. Now, they would have to be even more resourceful. With their warlords leading the charge, Hawk said, "We know they won't be fighting as one cohesive fleet anymore. But the warlords are also their biggest weakness. They're proud, arrogant, and they think they're invincible. We need to use that against them." Her plan was risky, but it was humanity's best hope. Instead of confronting the Urkarian fleet head-on, Earth's forces would target each warlord's flagship, isolating them from the rest of the fleet. The idea was to create chaos by taking down the warlords one by one, forcing the Urkarians into disarray. This would give Earth's forces an opening to disrupt their command structure and weaken their resolve. But to do this, the rusted warships would need to be more than just a distraction. They would need to strike fast, without warning, and without hesitation. The warlords were known for their merciless nature, and if given the chance, they would decimate Earth's forces. Captain Hawk and her team spent days preparing for the attack, working alongside Earth's best strategists and engineers. Every detail had to be flawless. The warlords would have their own fleets, but their pride and arrogance would blind them to Earth's tactics. They would expect a traditional assault, but they would instead face something completely different. A series of surgical strikes designed to incapacitate, not annihilate. The first phase of the operation began quietly. A small group of rusted warships slipped into Urkarian-controlled space, avoiding detection through the same clever tactics they had used before. They moved under the cover of an asteroid belt, taking advantage of the natural debris to hide their movements. Their first target was a warlord known as Korak the Scourge, one of the most brutal of the Urkarian commanders. Korak's flagship was a massive ship, bristling with weapons and surrounded by an armada of loyal vessels. His reputation for cruelty was unmatched, and he had been responsible for the destruction of several human colonies. But Captain Hawk's forces knew that his pride would be his downfall. They had carefully studied his ship's patterns, watching how he always led from the front, eager to destroy anything in his path. The rusted warships launched their attack at the most unexpected time, in the middle of Korak's celebration of yet another victory. As Korak boasted of his triumphs, Earth's fleet moved in silently, striking his flagship's critical weak points. The plan was executed with precision, blinding Korak's flagship with an electromagnetic pulse, disrupting its systems and forcing it into a standstill. Korak was furious, but by the time he realized what had happened, it was too late. His once invincible ship was now crippled, vulnerable to Earth's attacks. His pride had led him to underestimate humanity, and now his arrogance had cost him. The rusted warships, once dismissed as scrap, had managed to strike at the heart of the Orcarian command. As Korek's flagship limped into the depths of space, his fleet was thrown into disarray. The other warlords, watching from afar, knew that their own time would come. The Orcarians were beginning to panic, and Earth's forces had shown that they could not be defeated by sheer force alone. This victory marked a turning point in the war. The rusted warships had proven they could take down an Orcarian warlord, and with each success, they gained more confidence. The rising tide of humanity's resistance was undeniable. The Orcarians may have had the advantage in numbers, but humanity had learned to strike where it counted most, at the heart of the enemy's power. After the fall of Korek the Scourge, Earth's forces gained more confidence. The Orcarian warlords, once seen as the invincible commanders of an unstoppable empire, were now beginning to fracture. The humans had struck a decisive blow to the heart of their leadership, and the Orcarians were struggling to maintain control over their far-reaching forces. Captain Jane Hawk knew this was their opportunity, but she also understood the magnitude of what lay ahead. The Orcarians were not known for their mercy. They would not forgive the loss of one of their warlords easily. The next few days would determine if Earth's strategy could work at a larger scale, or if they had only poked the hornet's nest, stirring the Orcarians into an even greater fury. The remaining warlords convened, no longer certain of their power. They had watched as Earth's rusted warships tore through their pride, taking down Korek and his fleet with shocking efficiency. There was a clear divide among them. Some demanded retaliation, eager to avenge their fallen comrade. Others, however, feared further losses and urged caution. But in the end, their arrogance and thirst for domination won out. They chose to escalate, mobilizing their entire fleet for a final, crushing assault on Earth. The Orcarian fleet began its move toward Earth's defenses, but this time, they didn't come alone. The warlords brought with them a terrifying new weapon, a super weapon that had been kept secret for centuries. The weapon was massive, more than a dozen times the size of the largest warship in the Orcarian fleet. Its sole purpose was simple: annihilation. This was no ordinary ship. It was a harbinger of death, equipped with an energy cannon capable of wiping out entire cities in a single shot. The news of the Orcarian superweapon reached Earth's commanders within hours. Hawk immediately gathered her crew, aware that this might be their greatest challenge yet. The time for subtlety was over. Earth's forces could no longer afford to strike from the shadows. They needed to confront the Orcarian threat head-on, but doing so would require every ounce of humanity's ingenuity. "We've proven we can fight on our terms," Hawk said, her voice firm but resolute. "Now it's time to show them that we can fight on theirs. We have one chance to stop this weapon before it obliterates everything we've worked for." The plan was risky, perhaps too risky. The idea was to use the rusted warships as bait, drawing the Orcarian fleet into a trap. Earth's forces would launch a feint, luring the Orcarian superweapon into the heart of Earth's defenses. Once it was isolated, Earth's military would deploy a newly developed experimental weapon, a missile capable of disabling the superweapon's energy cannon. If they were successful, the Orcarian fleet would be left without their most powerful weapon, and their remaining warlords would be forced to retreat. The execution of the plan was as precise as it was dangerous. Hawk's fleet moved out first, positioning the rusted warships along the outer edge of Earth's defenses. Their mission was to draw the Orcarians into an ambush. The humans knew the Orcarians' arrogance and pride would make them overestimate their own strength. They would believe the rusted ships were no threat, just another distraction. The trap worked. The Orcarian fleet took the bait, and the massive superweapon broke through Earth's outer defenses, moving closer to the planet with its sights set on annihilation. Once the weapon was in position, Earth's forces activated the second phase of the plan. A squadron of human fighters, working in perfect coordination, launched a series of precisely timed strikes on the superweapon's hull, exposing its critical weak points. As the superweapon struggled to fight back, the final missile was fired, piercing through the ship's defenses and disabling the energy cannon. The Urkarian superweapon was left powerless, its once mighty gun reduced to a useless husk. The warlords aboard it raged in frustration, but they had no time to react before Earth's remaining forces closed in. The Urkarian fleet, now in disarray, was forced to retreat. It was a monumental victory. The Urkarians had come to Earth with the full might of their empire, confident that no human force could stand against them. But humanity had proven them wrong once again. The rusted warships, once thought obsolete, had turned the tide of the battle and shattered the Urkarian sense of invulnerability. As Earth's forces regrouped, Hawk stood in the command center, watching as the Urkarian fleet withdrew. She knew they had not won the war. Not yet. The Urkarians would return, no doubt with a new strategy, and the battle for Earth would continue. But for now, humanity had secured a momentous victory. The Urkarians had learned an important lesson. Earth was not a planet to be taken lightly. The warlords had underestimated human resilience, and now they were paying the price. "Prepare for the next phase," Hawk said, her voice calm but unwavering. "This isn't over yet." The victory over the Urkarian superweapon was a hard-won triumph, but Captain Jane Hawk knew that it was only a temporary reprieve. The Urkarians were not the type to accept defeat easily. Their pride had been shattered, and their hunger for vengeance would only grow. They would return stronger, with more resources and more deadly weapons. Earth had bought some time, but the war was far from over. As Hawk and her commanders gathered for a briefing in the war room, a somber mood hung over them. Earth had dealt a crippling blow to the Urkarian fleet, but it was clear that their enemies' resolve had not wavered. The Urkarian warlords were regrouping, vowing to avenge their losses, and Earth's forces were spread thin, unsure of when the next wave would come. "We've shaken them, but we need to be ready for the next assault," Hawk said, addressing her team. "They'll come with everything they have. We need a plan that doesn't just stop them for a moment, but changes the course of this war." The solution lay in Earth's ability to capitalize on their technological advancements and the resilience of the rusted warships. The Urkarians had underestimated these ships, dismissing them as outdated relics, but the humans had turned them into a weapon of extraordinary power. Now, with the support of the greatest minds on Earth, they needed to push forward and create a weapon that would strike directly at the Urkarian leadership. They would go for the heart of the enemy's command structure, the central hub of the Urkarian Empire, located on their homeworld. It was a bold plan, too bold for most. But for those who had fought alongside Hawk, it was the only way forward. They would infiltrate Urkarian space once more, bypassing their defenses, and strike at the core of their empire. If successful, they could cripple the Urkarian command and force a peace settlement on humanity's terms. If they failed, Earth would fall. The days leading up to the mission were filled with tense preparation. The Urkarian homeworld was heavily fortified, surrounded by fleets of warships and the most advanced defenses imaginable. But the humans had a unique advantage: the rusted warships. Their unpredictability, combined with the Urkarians' overconfidence, made them the perfect tool for this high-risk operation. The mission would require stealth, precision, and speed. Captain Hawk and her best officers would lead a small task force of rusted warships through the heart of Urkarian-controlled space, avoiding detection at all costs. The goal was simple: to reach the Urkarian capital and launch a devastating strike against the core of their government. They would have no backup, no reinforcements. The fate of humanity rested on this single mission. As the ships readied for launch, the mood was tense but resolute. There were no guarantees, no assurances of success, but humanity had already shown its ability to surprise the Urkarians at every turn. This final push would determine whether Earth could push the Urkarians to the negotiating table, or if they would be wiped out in a final, desperate war of attrition. Captain Hawk stood at the front of the bridge, gazing out into the void of space as the fleet prepared to depart. The weight of their mission was heavy on her shoulders, but she knew that it was a risk they had to take. If they succeeded, Humanity would have the upper hand. If they failed, the Orcarians would not hesitate to wipe them out completely. "We do this together," Hawk said, turning to her officers. "No one fights alone. This is our home, and we will protect it with everything we have." With that, the rusted warships moved out, their engines igniting in unison as they cut through space toward the Orcarian heart of power. The final battle was upon them. There would be no retreat, no second chances. This was humanity's last stand. As they entered Orcarian space, the task force faced a brutal barrage of enemy ships and automated defenses. Every maneuver was calculated to avoid detection, but the closer they got to the Orcarian capital, the more intense the opposition became. Their path was littered with obstacles: enemy patrols, surveillance satellites, and massive defensive grids. Yet, the rusted warships held strong, their unpredictable movements and human ingenuity keeping them one step ahead of the enemy's attacks. Then, finally, after what felt like an eternity of evasion, the fleet reached the outskirts of the Orcarian capital. The heart of the Empire lay just ahead, protected by its final line of defense. But the humans had no time to waste. They had to act now. The mission was clear: strike at the heart of the Orcarian government. It was humanity's last chance to secure their future. The final mission had begun. Captain Jane Hawk and her fleet of rusted warships were now deep inside Orcarian space, drawing closer to the heart of the enemy empire. Their objective was clear: destroy the Orcarian command structure, cripple their leadership, and end the war once and for all. There would be no second chances. This was a one-way mission, and if they failed, Earth would be lost. As their ships drifted closer to the capital world, the enemy's defenses grew stronger. Every corner of Orcarian space seemed to be crawling with warships, automated drones, and high-tech surveillance. Earth's task force was outnumbered, and though their ships were enhanced with alien technology, the enemy still had vast superiority in terms of resources and firepower. But humanity had something the Orcarians could never anticipate: the will to survive and the ability to outthink their opponents at every turn. Hawk stood on the bridge of her flagship, staring at the holographic map of the Orcarian capital in front of her. The final stretch was the hardest, an invisible barrier of defense that could wipe them out at any moment. They were so close now, and she knew the Orcarians would be ready for them. But there was no turning back. This was Earth's final stand. "Prepare for Phase 2, Hawk said, her voice calm but resolute. The team had been trained for this moment. Every officer aboard the rusted ships knew their roles. There was no room for error. The fleet adjusted its course, threading through the dense web of Orcarian defense systems. Advanced automated ships, designed to intercept and destroy intruders, now swarmed in their path. Earth's ships, small but nimble, performed evasive maneuvers, dodging lasers and missile barrages with expert precision. Each ship was a deadly force in its own right, but working together as a united front, they were more than the sum of their parts. Hawk's heart raced as her ship ducked and weaved through the firestorm of enemy resistance. They had already taken out a few automated drones, but there were still hundreds more to go. With each moment, the tension mounted. This was the moment they had all prepared for, the one chance to shift the course of the war. The task force moved as one, a silent fleet made up of the once discarded rusted ships that had now proven their worth. The enemy had underestimated these ships, believing them to be weak and outdated, but Earth had turned them into an asset that the Orcarians couldn't ignore. "Coordinates locked," came the voice of Commander Elisa Juno, Hawk's most trusted officer. "We're in range of the central core. Should we engage now?" Hawk glanced at the readout, and then out the viewport at the towering city of the Orcarian capital, its spires reaching into the sky like jagged teeth. It was beautiful in a terrifying way. Humanity had come so far, and now it was time to make their final stand. "Engage," Hawk ordered. "Let's end this." The task force pushed forward with a renewed ferocity. As they closed in on the capital's heart, Earth's ships unleashed everything they had. The rusted warships fired their most powerful weapons, focusing on the central command hub, home to the Orcarian warlords, and their most critical systems. Explosions lit up the skyline as energy blasts tore through Orcarian infrastructure. The Orcarians retaliated fiercely, launching everything from ion cannons to massive warheads at the human ships. It was a battle like no other, desperate, frantic, and brutal. But the humans had one advantage. They knew the Orcarian weaknesses, having exploited them before. Their fleet moved like a swarm of hornets, each strike calculated, each ship operating in perfect harmony with the others. Then, in the distance, a massive explosion lit up the sky. A colossal fireball that signified the destruction of one of the central power stations. The core had been hit. The shockwave reverberated through the capital, destabilizing the Orcarian leadership's control. Their once unified empire now began to fracture. But the war was not yet over. The Orcarian warlords, seething with rage, rallied their remaining forces for one final counterattack. They couldn't afford to lose control of their homeworld, not after everything they had built. As they unleashed wave after wave of desperate attacks, the humans held their ground. The remaining warships of the Orcarian fleet moved in, but the odds were now stacked against them. Captain Hawk watched as the enemy's once mighty ships began to fall, one by one. Their weapons misfired, their ships turned to chaos as their leadership disintegrated. Earth's forces were relentless, hammering down on every weak spot, exploiting every gap in the Orcarian defense. The final blow came when the central command ship, the hub of their entire operation, was breached and destroyed, taking with it the last of the Orcarian leadership. Silence fell over the battlefield as the last of the Orcarian fleet fled into the depths of space, leaving Earth's forces victorious but battered. The war was over. The Orcarians had been defeated. Captain Hawk allowed herself a brief moment of relief, though she knew this victory had come at a great cost. Earth had survived, but the scars of war would last for generations. Humanity had proven it could rise from the ashes of its enemies and fight for its survival. And now, the galaxy would never forget the humans who had turned their rusted warships into a force to be reckoned with. "This is just the beginning," Hawk murmured to herself, staring at the remnants of the Orcarian Empire. "We've won today, but the future is ours to shape."